A remarkable woman, Kay Wood is known for her kindness, hospitality, love of the outdoors, advocacy work to protect nature. She was also an inspiration for youth, a resource for individuals interested in hiking, a leader of volunteers to care for the Appalachian Trail, a maintainer of the Appalachian Trail, and a thru hiker of the Appalachian Trail. Catherine Ula Corey arrived in Dalton, Mass. On May 13, 1918. Her parents, Chauncey and Cassie Corey, lived on Flintstone Farm, which is on North Street in Dalton, Mass. That's where they lived when they welcomed their fifth child, Catherine. This 3,000-acre farm, owned by Fred Crane, was nationally known for its registered milking shorthorns. Another claim to fame came in 1919 when the Flintstone Farm was awarded the top sow at the Eastern States Exhibition in Springfield, Massachusetts. During the early 1920s, the Corey family rented homes in Beckett, Washington, and Chester. Chauncey worked as a stone polisher for the Chester Granite Company. By 1924, Chauncey Corey and his wife bought a 100-acre farm in East Beckett. Just a year later, Cassie Corey died, leaving 7 children, including a 1-year-old and 7-year-old Kay. Chauncey Corey kept his family together. In addition to farming, he worked at Chester Granite until it closed in 1932. To support his family, Chauncey would take his team of horses to other farms and did haying and logging. He also added 800 chicks to the farm. When not in school, Kay tended to the chicks. Kay's lifetime hobby of hiking began in childhood. To attend high school, Kay walked from the Corey farm in East Beckett along wooded paths and country roads to Chester. Round trip each day was 7 miles. Kay once said to a Berkshire Eagle reporter, "Sometimes, on unplowed roads, the snow was over my knees, and getting there took extra energy. In driving snowstorms, I could hardly see where I was going." After graduating Chester High School in 1935, the middle of the Depression, Kay took any work available, including cooking, cleaning, working as a health aide, and doing farm work. She also took classes at Berkshire Business College. On June 22, 1940, Kay married William Wood. He enlisted in the U.S. Army during World War II and served in the European theater from 1943 to 1945. While Bill was in the service, Kay worked at GE on defense work and for an uncle's plumbing and hardware company in Dalton. In 1947, Kay and Bill had their first child, a son. By the time they lived at 208 South Street, they were a family of 5 with 2 daughters born in late 1950s. Raising her family, Kay introduced her children to the joys of nature. The family leisure activities included camping and hiking.
Camping, we used to go camping with family and cousins. Bushwhacking, if we went camping somewhere and she wanted to make a trail, she took her compass and sometimes went alone, sometimes took us children or relatives. Always got out. I never lost any of us. And in the meantime, was interested in making her own like backpack and hiking food, and the family were the guinea pigs for that one. She was a great cook, and other people liked it too.
In the 1950s, Kay began teaching Sunday school at the First Congregational Church in Dalton. Her devotion to her church continued throughout her life. When the First Congregational Church sponsored a family from Cambodia, Kay played a key role helping this family adjust to life in the United States. As a scout leader, Kay shared her interest in the outdoors and knowledge of nature with girls. She took the scouts hiking and camping.
My sister and I were in the Campfire Girls too.
Okay.
And her big thing was getting all the girls outdoors.
The location of her home on the Appalachian Trail offered frequent contact with many long-distance hikers. Kay was known to provide trail magic before that term was coined. Kay fed hikers, offered many a shower, let some camp in her backyard or on the porch. Kay enjoyed hearing about where the hikers were from and their experiences on the trail. In 1960, Kay befriended Grandma Gatewood when she walked down South Street, passing Kay's home. Grandma Gatewood hiked the AT in 1955 with primitive gear. She was in her 60s. Accepting lemonade, a foot soak, and overnight accommodations at Kay's sparked a friendship that continued with letter correspondence long after Gatewood left the trail. This woman inspired Kay to dream of hiking the entire AT someday. In the 1960s, Kay served on the Appalachian Mountain Club Outings Committee, the first of her many roles in the AMC.
When I first met Kay, it was on a Saturday work party on Mount Greylock, Jones Nose Side Trail. She was the volunteer coordinator of the AT committee, which was a fledgling group brought together by ATC and AMC. We needed spikes to nail together a gate blocking the AT access to the side trail and the field beyond. Kay volunteered to get them. She returned with the spikes at a cost of 25 cents apiece to her, and she bought cider for a treat. This act was repeated many times on many different occasions. Kay's heart was so much bigger than her small, lean body. Tool shed, they called it. It was right across from the visitor center there on Greylock. And it basically is a barn-shaped building, and it had a gambrel roof, which is like this. And getting up there can be problematic for some of us, me included. Fingernails on shingles are not well received. And Kay tapped into the Berkshire chapter, and there was a gentleman that was part of their mountain climbing group or the rock climbing group that she tapped into, which was ever so unique with Kay. She was able to tap into more people. She knew more people. And when you needed something, she would get specific and get that individual. And in this case, he came, I'm trying to think of his name as I speak. He came and he was like a beetle. He crawled across these open rafters like it was nothing, when the rest of us were like, egads, be careful.
Individuals in the Berkshires interested in hiking called Kay for information about trails. Kay often would lead them on a hike herself. For years, she was an informal resource for people seeking to explore trails in Berkshire County.
All of my memories of Kay Wood are very nice. The one that stands out in my mind the most is when I first met Kay in 1971. I was a newlywed coming from New York City. In New York, I had belonged to a hiking group, and I wanted to find one here in the Berkshires. Someone suggested I call Kay. She couldn't help me with the hiking group because there weren't any. Kay offered to take my husband and me hiking herself. The outing included our neighbors, another couple. We enjoyed a lovely hike on Warner Hill, and it was a special time that we all appreciated.
Another woman Kay helped learn trails around Dalton returned to the Berkshires when she retired. This woman wanted to hike with someone familiar with the trails. A friend told her about Kay. One day, while hiking on North Mountain, she saw a woman walking at a very good pace. Thinking it must be Kay, she called out to her, and it was. That was the beginning of a friendship that had this recent retiree hiking often with Kay. On some of their outings, she wondered if Kay remembered she was not alone. It was not easy to keep up with Kay. A joy of being with Kay was that she was an excellent teacher about nature. Kay taught hikers to appreciate their surroundings by noticing foundations, stone walls, and seeing plants, wildflowers, and trees. Kay's idea of an outing often included clearing brush on the trail. Kay frequently walked with tools in hand. In September 1977, Kay Wood and 5 others founded Berkshire Knapsackers. They sent out requests to join and 60 members signed up.
Well, I first met Kay when she assigned me a section of the trail to maintain. She wanted to meet each of her new maintainers and go over their responsibilities with them in the field. So off we met from Notch Road on the north side of Greylock up Mount Prospect. And not long a climb, but short and really steep in spots. And she told me to go ahead since she'd slowed down in her old age. She was solidly in her 80s by that time, and that she'd meet me on the top of Prospect. Well, she was right behind me, step for step, all the way up that hill, and chatting the whole way up. At the top, I said to her, Kay, I thought you told me you'd slowed down in your old age. And she assured me that she had, to which I could only reply that I was really happy I wasn't trying to keep up with her in her younger years. She was a pleasure to work with, and I'm very fortunate to have been able to work with her for a number of years, and I remember her fondly.
Each year, the committee assessed the trail needs and listed tasks to complete. This project list was mailed to volunteers.
And in those days, what we did was to get a mimeograph machine someplace, or a Xerox, we called them, and run them off at maybe, I don't know, 10 cents a copy. Yeah, it was
Right.
significant expense in those days. And then we put them in envelopes, and it took about 10 man-hours to lick and stick the stamps and the closures on the envelopes. It was a different time in those days, and then we'd send them out.
Our dining room table was always a hodgepodge of papers because you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have computers, you had the typewriter with the carbon paper.
A book that mentions Kay is Forest and Crag by Laura and Guy Waterman. This book is a history of hiking, trailblazing, and adventure in the Northeast Mountains. In a section discussing differing personalities of trail maintainers, Waterman say they range from cantankerous to boundlessly tolerant. They describe Kay Wood's style as achieving results with patience and philosophy. They also call Kay one of the giants of modern trail maintenance. According to Waterman, relocating the AT in Massachusetts was difficult. The National Park Service and others wrestled with bitter controversies with landowners, public hearings, lawsuits, newspaper headlines, and other accoutrements of altercation. Kay Wood led volunteer trail workers to scout, mark, and cut the new trail sections in Massachusetts. In the 1980s, Kay was a catalyst for moving the AT in Berkshire County. In August 1984, Kay wrote a letter to the Berkshire Eagle stating, "The AT contains more road walking in Massachusetts than in any other state through which the trail passes." During the 1980s, there were many meetings with the National Park Service, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Management, the Appalachian Mountain Club, and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Negotiations with local landowners presented a significant challenge to accomplish the task of transferring the trail off-road. Peter Jensen, a professional trail builder and former AMC employee who worked with Kay on the relocation of the AT in Massachusetts, remembers Kay as a key player negotiating with landowners, state officials, and state and federal agencies.
I just remember her being a, very, reasonably minded person.
Kay corresponded with the Department of the Interior and Senator Edward Kennedy to achieve the goal of relocating the trail.
There in the 80s, when it became obvious that the trail was shifting to asphalt, that we were losing the woods, and an appeal was made to the Park Service to take this on as a National Scenic Trail. It was the first one, actually.
Dennis Reagan, former director of the Housatonic Valley Association and longtime AMC employee, remembers Kay's role on relocating the AT in Massachusetts. Once right-of-ways were granted and the necessary land was purchased, many volunteers worked long days to construct the trail. On those days, Kay made the experience enjoyable by bringing the workers delicious food. Kay moved from her South Street home after her husband Bill died. In 1986, she began to plan her through hike.
She came to us after the meeting and said, I need to be released of all my responsibilities on the committee. And we were taken aback. What is this? And she went on and she said, I intend to hike the whole trail next year. And I need to get free of all my responsibilities.
Kay had already walked over 400 miles on the Appalachian Trail prior to her through hike. Her hikes included all of the trail in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Vermont, as well as most of New Hampshire. Kay scaled Maine's highest peaks, including Mount Katahdin, by 1980. As part of her preparation for her through hike, Kay had Peter Limmer, a boot maker in New Hampshire, make custom-fitting boots for her. In 1987, volunteers built the Kay Wood Shelter, a short distance from Grange Hall Road in Dalton, Massachusetts. Kay always called it the Dalton Shelter.
It's interesting, we named the shelter, which is the first one we made to this specification, the Kay Wood Shelter. That was Rick Wagner's idea, and he persuaded the rest of the committee that that was the thing to do.
To name it Kay.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. While she was still alive.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful.
And she was always too modest to call it the Kay Wood Shelter. She always called it the Dalton Shelter.
In April 1988, Kay traveled to Georgia to fulfill her dream of hiking the entire AT. Family and friends gathered to send Kay off at the Pittsfield bus station. Her grandchildren gave her an orange T-shirt with Grandma Kay in big letters. On April 13th, 1988, Kay climbed the blue-blazed approach trail to the summit of Springer Mountain, the southern terminus of the AT. Her friend Dee Dee and her brother-in-law from Florida wished her well after an all-you-can-eat breakfast near Amicalola State Park. For her first night on the AT, Kay stayed at the Hawk Mountain Shelter. Kay's pace on early days were typically 7 to 8 miles. On April 21st, Kay stopped for water at the Monterey Shelter. There, Kay met the Bopsy Bums, Melanie and Bruce Thompson. This chance encounter was providential. Melanie and Bruce were in their 20s. The decades between them did not hinder their developing a friendship. At that time, Kay could not have known that this young couple would remain in her life long after she left the trail.
We met Grandma Kay in April of '88 in the early days of our through hikes, and were fortunate to spend over 3 weeks hiking together. Bruce and I were impressed by her incredible endurance and by her unwavering positive spirit. Being youngsters, we were all about getting to Katahdin, but Kay taught us through her cheerful, humble outlook and actions. The hike was more importantly an opportunity to observe, to absorb, to learn, and to be grateful. For over 3 weeks, Grandma Kay, Bandana Man, and us, the Bopsy Bums, struck an unlikely foursome, but the AT bonded us in a way that only that magical trail can. We were truly blessed to keep in touch with Kay for over the years, always inspirational and much loved.
After this water stop, the hikers continued on their separate ways. On May 1st, Kay reconnected with the Bopsy Bums at Cold Gap Shelter. There she met Bandana Man Chip Owen. The next morning, Chip serenaded the group with his harmonica.
up this morning, I had them sleeping bag blues. Yes, I woke up this morning, I had them sleeping bag blues.
Kay and the Bobsy Bums and I were all traveling about the same rate on the trail at that particular point. We wouldn't be with each other all day. We would hike at different paces, but we would be ending up at the same place at the end of the day. And the day I'm thinking of, I was having a real hard time staying ahead of Kay. You know, I would stop for lunch, or I'd stop for a little rest break, and here'd come Kay up behind me every time. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, I'm 27. I can't let this grandmother beat me, right? So I'd kick in the afterburner. I'd head on up the trail, scooch up ahead of her. And finally, at the end of the day, I could see the trail shelter from a good distance off. I could see that our friends were already there. And so as I'm coming into camp, I'm crowing, man. I'm, you know, hey, look at me. I bested Kay. I beat her to camp, which was, of course, all in good humor. A few minutes later, Kay shows up anyway. And, you know, she wasn't in any race. I was the only one trying to get there first. But it goes to show you that what she was all about. You know, if she was like, I would have loved to have known Kay in her 20s, because the Kay I knew was pretty awesome. I'd like to see the young version of her. She was really, really impressive human being. The most impressive thing about Kay, when I first met her on the AT, was how completely different she was from every other septuagenarian that I'd ever come across. You could take my mom, for example, who never spent a night outside in her life. She wouldn't have dreamed of it. She really wouldn't have ever laid her head down in a dirty old trail shelter that had mice. That was going to be impossible. She never would have done it. She never would have gone without running water or a bathroom for even a day. But meanwhile, here's Kay. And at the time, she was shy of her 70th birthday. I don't know if it was a week or more. But she was very close to 70. And here she is alone. And she's not big as a minute. She's throwing on a backpack on the trail by herself, heading north. And, man, I got to say, I was blown away. Kay had her mojo working, let me tell you.
And again on May 10th, the three of them were at the same shelter, Walnut Mountain. Kay's birthday was part of their conversation. On May 13th, Kay turned 70. Kay received from her niece in California a birthday card with a red balloon. Kay tied it to her pack and headed on her way.
So after our reunion with Grandma Kay at Double Spring Shelter, we were lucky enough to stay within distance of each other all through the Smokies and up to Hot Springs. And there we did get separated because Grandma Kay decided to stay behind an extra day to answer all the mail she had received because her birthday was the next day. So after a birthday lunch of chili dogs, we had to say our goodbyes and headed up the trail. And she had given us a couple of balloons in honor of her birthday, which we tied to a tree the next day along the trail so she would see them, along with a moon pie that Captain Moon Pie, another hiker along the trail, has supplied to surprise Kay for her birthday. And we did hear later that, amazingly enough, it was still there on the tree when she came by to get it. There's a lot of hungry hikers out there, so that's probably quite a feat.
The other birthday treats that Kay received were a moon pie and chocolate cupcakes her daughter Linda had mailed, complete with candles. That night, Kay celebrated at Spring Mountain Shelter with hikers, and there she shared her desserts. On May 28th, Kay arrived in Damascus, Virginia, too late to retrieve an important package from the post office. She knew it included a new pair of hiking pants, a pair that would fit much better. Memorial Day weekend caused Kay to wait until Tuesday for her package. In addition to the pants she received, Kay was surprised by a birthday greeting from the Outhouse crew. Pete Rentz, Steve Abel, Rick Wagner, Bob Hatton, Gordon Thorpe, and Dick Mullins built privies along the AT in Berkshire County. They sent a card and a cake to mark Kay's 70th.
She was on the AT, and we were conspiring here in Dalton to send her a birthday cake.
Cool.
And we sent it to her, packed it in popcorn, and put a birthday card in it. I think she may still have the birthday card, or Linda might have it amongst the artifacts. It shows someone cutting a birthday cake with a chainsaw. And we thought that was pretty appropriate for Kay, and she got it. Didn't look much like a birthday cake when she opened it, but it tasted good.
Oh, good.
And she shared it with several friends, and was quite thankful that she got it.
Kay's knees continued to hurt. On Route 42 in Virginia, in Sinking Creek Valley, Kay left the trail and accepted a ride to Dalton from a couple going to Vermont. It was June 19th, 1988. Kay celebrated her 71st birthday while finishing the hike in 1989. At the Bear Fence Shelter on May 13th, 1989, Kay wrote in the registry, "A candle lighted on top of a box of chocolate chip cookies. Best cake I ever had. The quart of real orange juice was better than champagne. What a nice 71st birthday." On Monday, May 22nd, 1989, Kay posed for the traditional photo at Harper's Ferry.
So in 1989, Grandma Kay was back out on the trail trying to complete her hike, and we lived in Maryland a couple hours from the trail, and we're hoping to hook up and meet her when she came through.
The shelter that she wanted to meet us at was a little over 2 hours from our apartment in Maryland. We drove up there in the evening after work. We weren't sure where she was and initially hiked into Mackey Run Shelter, south of Tumbling Run Shelter. There were hikers at Mackey Run Shelter who told us Kay hiked onto Tumbling Run. When we reached Tumbling Run Shelter, it was almost dark. Kay was alone in the shelter, deep asleep, snug as a bug in her sleeping bag. Gently, Bruce woke her up, saying in a quiet voice, "Grandma Kay, it's Bruce and Melanie, the Bobsy Bums." She slowly opened her eyes and said, You can't be. The Bobsy Bums aren't coming." She believed that because the previous day she called me and I told her we unfortunately wouldn't be able to come. After speaking to Kay, we correctly rearranged our priorities, and we made sure we got out to see her. Finally, we roused her totally out of her slumber. What an expression of delight and surprise she had. She said she thought she was dreaming. The next morning, after Bruce's wonderfully prepared breakfast of pancakes, grapefruit, and juice, Bruce took Kay's and my backpacks to the car. Then Kay and I slack-packed north towards a road crossing, where Bruce parked the car and hiked south to meet us. The trail climbed out of Tumbling Run, and I hiked behind Kay. I marveled not only of her stamina, but of her muscular legs. With all the weight training I did in the gym, I never had the hiking muscular legs she had. Those calves had a lot of New England hiking miles on them, even before she started the AT.
Completing the hike would happen in sections. The northern part in the fall of 1988, and Virginia to New York in the spring of 1989. She celebrated the completion of her through hike on October 26, 1989, with a final section from Bulls Bridge, Connecticut to Route 22 north of Pawling, New York. After her through hike, Kate was known to visit the shelter to check on it and often brought her grandchildren. From the Kaywood shelter, hikers walk into Dalton along Depot Street, the 1992 new location of the AT. Many camp in the yard of Tom Lavardi. Kay regularly visited the hikers at Tom's.
And she would walk from her apartment in Dalton, I think it was on North Street, and she would walk down the trail and go up to, most of the time, up to her shelter, the Kaywood shelter. And I would see her so many times walking back and forth. But I think her greatest joy was walking with her grandchildren. She was just in her glory, walking with the grandchildren. And on those days when she might not be with her grandchildren, she would stop and come over here and sit at the picnic table and talk with hikers for hours. She just loved to talk with hikers, hikers that were doing their through hikes. She would ask them about their hike, how it was going. She just loved listening to their stories. And of course, the hikers were asking her about her through hike. And she was just absolutely in her glory, talking about the trail, about her hikes, listening to others' hikes. It was just such a joy for her to relive the whole experience of hiking on the trail.
Larry Luxembourg, author of Walking the Appalachian Trail and founder of the AT Museum in Pennsylvania, first met Kay when he thru-hiked the AT in 1980. Kay arrived at his shelter looking for a couple of hikers. Their family contacted Kay expressing concern about where they were. Later, he interviewed Kay for his book.
And at 70 completed the whole trail. So even today, that makes her one of the oldest women to have done the whole trail. The oldest did it when she was 74. So Kay was close to that when she did the trail. But a 70-year-old still stands out.
At her 90th birthday party, the Bopsy Bums, Melanie and Bruce Thompson, who Kay had met early on her hike in 1988, they came to Dalton with their son Forrest to celebrate with Kay. Following a brief illness, Kay died February 16th, 2010, a few months shy of her 92nd birthday. Kay left an incredible legacy. Trail volunteers continue to maintain the AT in Berkshire County. Interest in protecting the trail remains strong. The Berkshire Knapsackers endures as a resource for hikers. The group currently has over 50 outings each year with more than 100 members ranging in age from 20s to 80s. In true Kaywood spirit, they have an appreciation of nature and the beauty of the Berkshires. Knapsacker outings consist of hiking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, kayaking, and biking. They have 3 gatherings after hikes in October, New Year's Day, and June for a potluck. Kay's family remembers and instills love of nature in the next generation. In a note left in the registry at the Kaywood shelter, granddaughter Kate writes, "I hiked all over this area with my grandma as a kid. It means so much to me that through hikers like this spot."
We all share a Kay story. We all have felt her friendship and love, and we all are better for it. Grandma, we will miss you. In our hearts, you live on, and the trail in Massachusetts honors you with a shelter in your name. Kay always will have her name added to the list of all us dreamers who share the dream that is the AT, to hike it, to build it, preserve it, and be part of it.
When I woke up this morning, I had them sleeping bag blues. And when I woke up this morning, Grandma Kay seemed to have them too. Yeah, when I woke up this morning, I had them sleeping bag blues.
What am I gonna do about this blister on my toe? I said, I woke up this morning and I had them sleeping bag blues. I said, I woke up this morning, there was icicles on my shoes.